Okay, so you're probably here because you need some clear answers about NGO Darpan registration, right?
Mhm.
Well, think of this as your personal guide. We're going to break down the essentials for you.
Exactly. We're doing a deep dive today into NGO Darpan. That's the portal run by NTI Ayog.
The government think tank, yeah.
Right. And it's really important for linking NGOs with government departments.
It is. And it's more than just, being on a list. It's really about building trust, being transparent.
Absolutely.
And crucially, it's often the key, isn't it, to getting government grants, maybe CSR funds.
And even FCRA registration. It simplifies things.
Definitely. So our mission today, tackle those common questions, give you clarity, and hopefully not overload you with info.
Sounds good.
Let's jump right in then. First big one. What actually is NGO Darpan, and why should NGOs in India care about it?
Okay, so NGO Darpan, basically, it's an online platform. NTI Ayog manages it.
Right.
Its main job is to be that interface, that connection between NGOs in India and various government departments.
An interface, okay.
Now, why it's important? Well, transparency is a big part of it. It's a real step towards making the nonprofit sector more open.
How so? Like a public database?
Yeah, kind of. It's a centralized database. Government agencies, even the public, can access verified info about NGOs there.
Okay, verified info. That sounds useful. But let's unpack that. Beyond just being listed, how does this actually help an NGO, practically speaking?
Well, that's the key point, really. Registration on Darpan is very often a first step, sometimes a requirement, for getting government grants.
Ah, so you need it to even apply sometimes.
Often, yes. Lots of government schemes think education, health, rural development. They'll ask for that Darpan ID right at the start. It's the first box you need to tick.
Okay, grants. What else? You mentioned CSR.
Yes, corporate social responsibility funds. This is becoming huge. In India, companies over a certain size have to spend on CSR.
Right, the 2% rule.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And many of these companies, they actively use the Darpan portal. They look for credible, transparent NGOs to partner with.
So it's like a matchmaking tool for funding.
In a way, yes. And we're talking serious money here. Billions of rupees every year go into CSR. Being on Darpan makes you visible to that pool.
Billions. Wow.
Right.
Okay. And the third thing, FCRA.
Right, FCRA. That's the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. If an NGO wants to receive funds from outside India,
The foreign donation.
they need FCRA registration. And having a Darpan ID often smooths out that application process. It's frequently a prerequisite.
Okay, that's a really clear picture. Grants, CSR, FCRA help. Seems pretty vital if you want that kind of support. But here's a big question. Is it legally mandatory? Does every single NGO have to register?
That's a really important clarification. The short answer is no. Legally, NGO Darpan registration isn't mandatory for all NGOs operating in India.
Oh, okay.
However, like we just discussed, it becomes pretty essential if you're seeking government funding, or you want those CSR partnerships, or you need that FCRA clearance for foreign money.
So if you're maybe a small, locally funded group, you might not technically need it.
You might not. If you're not pursuing those specific avenues, it's not a legal requirement. But I'd still say consider it.
Why?
Well, just for the visibility, the credibility boost it can give you within the sector. It still has benefits, even if you're not chasing those big funds immediately.
Got it. So not a legal must-do for everyone, but definitely a strong recommendation, maybe even a practical necessity for many, especially those looking for funds.
Precisely.
Okay, moving on. Who can actually register? What kind of organizations are eligible?
The criteria are quite specific here. It's open to NGOs that are properly registered in India
Registered out.
as one of three main legal forms, a trust, a society, or what's called a Section 8 company.
Trusts, societies, Section 8 companies. Those are the standard nonprofit structures, right?
They are. Those are the primary legal ways to set up a nonprofit in India.
So what if you're just, say, an informal community group? Or maybe just a couple people working on a project but haven't formally registered yet?
Then, unfortunately, no. You wouldn't be eligible for Darpan registration.
Individuals can't register either.
No, individuals acting just on their own can't register. The platform is specifically for those formally registered NGOs.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, so let's assume an organization is a registered trust, society, or Section 8 company. What documents do they need to pull together? What's on the checklist?
Okay, the documents. First up, the NGO needs its own PAN card. That's essential.
The organization's PAN, not an individual's.
Correct. The NGO's PAN. Then they need their registration certificate, the official paper that proves they are legally a trust, society, or Section 8.
Okay. PAN, registration proof. What else?
You also need details for the people running the show, specifically the PAN and Aadhaar cards for at least 3 members of the governing body.
3 key people.
Okay.
They're PAN and Aadhaar.
Yes, and make sure they're clear copies.
Yeah.
Then, the basics. A valid email address and a mobile number for the NGO itself.
For communication, I assume.
Exactly. That's how they'll contact you, send verifications, all that. And finally, you need to provide details about what the NGO actually does.
Like activities, mission.
Yeah, your activities, your mission statement, and also where you operate, the geographical areas you cover.
So they know your focus and reach.
Right. It helps them categorize and understand the organization.
That sounds like quite a bit to gather, especially the member details.
Right.
What about brand new NGOs? If an organization just got its registration certificate, can it apply straight away?
Yes, absolutely. There's no waiting period. As long as that newly registered NGO has all those documents ready.
The PAN, the certificate, the member details?
All of that stuff we just listed. If they have it, they're eligible to apply for NGO Darpan registration right away. Doesn't matter if they've been operating for a week or a year.
That's good news for new organizations. Okay, so you gather everything, you submit the application. What's the turnaround time usually like? How long does the registration process take?
Well, the official estimate is generally around 7 to 15 working days.
1 to 2 weeks, roughly?
Yeah, that's the target, after you've submitted everything correctly.
The correctly is key, I bet.
It is. But assuming all the documents are in order, clear, and complete, that 7 to 15-day window is what they aim for.
Okay. Could it take longer sometimes?
Oh, sure. It can vary. Depends on how busy they are, the volume of applications. But that's the typical time frame to expect.
All right. And if it all goes through, you get this Darpan unique ID. You mentioned it earlier. What exactly is that ID and why is it so important?
The Darpan unique ID, yeah, it's super important. It's basically a unique number, like an identification code.
Like a digital fingerprint for the NGO?
Kind of. It's assigned to each NGO once they successfully register on the portal. This ID becomes their main identifier whenever they interact with government agencies.
Okay.
And crucially, like we said about grants, it's often mandatory when you apply for government schemes, funding, other kinds of support.
So it's the number you quote on applications.
Exactly. Think of it as your NGO's official passport almost for engaging with the government ecosystem. Without it, honestly, accessing many of those opportunities is just much harder, if not impossible.
So no ID, potentially no government grants or schemes. That makes it pretty critical.
It really does.
Now, things change in organizations, right? What if an NGO gets new board members or moves office or updates its phone number after they've registered? Can they change their details on the Darpan profile?
Yes, they can. And they should. The portal allows registered NGOs to update their profile.
How does that work?
You'd log into your account, and you can usually edit things like the registered address, contact details, the names and details of the governing body members.
So you can add new people, remove old ones?
Yes, update operational details. It's really important to keep that information current. It ties back to that transparency goal.
Good. So it's not just set in stone once you register. You can maintain it.
Definitely.
Okay, a question on many people's minds. Cost. Does it cost anything to register on NGO Darpan? Is there a fee?
Good news here. No, the registration process on the NGO Darpan portal is completely free.
Totally free. No hidden charges.
Nope. 0 registration fees to sign up and get your unique ID. Which is great, especially for smaller NGOs, working with tight budgets.
That is really good news. Okay, but what if things don't go smoothly? Say an NGO applies and the application gets rejected. Or maybe it just seems stuck, pending forever. What should they do then?
Right, that can happen. First step, if it's rejected or stuck, is always check your submission meticulously.
Go back over everything.
Everything. Look for errors, missing documents, things not in the right format. Did you upload a blurry PAN card? Is the name slightly different on one document? That's often the culprit.
Attention to detail.
Absolutely. But if you've checked and rechecked and you're sure everything should be okay, but it's still stuck or rejected, there is help.
Oh, good. Who do you contact?
The NGO Darpan portal has a dedicated help desk. There's a toll-free number, 14414.
14414. Okay.
Or you can email them, ngo@india.gov.in. They should be able to look into the status and tell you what's wrong or what steps to take next.
So there are support channels if you hit a snag. Good to know. Now, we touched on FCRA earlier and also things like 12A and 80G registrations. Can you explain a bit more how DARPAN connects to those?
Sure. So 12A and 80G relate to income tax exemptions for nonprofits, right? And FCRA is for foreign funding.
Correct.
Often getting your NGO Darpan registration, getting that unique ID is kind of step one. It can be a prerequisite before you can even apply for 12A, 80G, or especially FCRA.
So you need the DARPAN ID before you apply for the others.
Frequently, yes. It doesn't guarantee you'll get the other registrations, of course. They have their own checks. But the government often uses the Darpan ID as that initial verification step. Okay, this NGO is registered with us here. Now they can proceed to apply for FCRA, that sort of thing.
Got it. Establishes a baseline identity before the more complex stuff. Now, let's circle back to funding again, CSR funds. How much does being on DARPAN really help with getting that corporate money? Is it a major factor?
I'd say yes, it can be a significant factor. Like we discussed, many companies looking to fulfill their CSR obligations prefer, sometimes even require, their NGO partners to be registered on DARPAN.
Why the preference?
It gives them a level of assurance. They see the DARPAN registration as a sign of credibility, transparency, basic compliance. It simplifies their due diligence process a bit, makes it easier for them to find and vet potential partners.
So it makes the NGO look more legit and easier to work with from the company's perspective.
Exactly. It can definitely give you an edge when approaching companies for CSR funding.
That's a clear benefit. On the flip side, what are some common mistakes you see NGOs make during the actual registration process? What trips people up?
Oh, there are a few classics. Number one is probably document errors. Uploading the wrong document, an incomplete one, or like I said, a blurry or unreadable stamp.
Simple stuff, but it stops the process.
Stops it dead. Another big one is inconsistency in the NGO's name. It must match exactly across the PAN card, the registration certificate, everything. Even a small variation can cause problems.
Like foundation versus trust in the name, if it's spelled out differently.
Precisely that kind of thing. Or a slight spelling difference. And the third common one is outdated contact details. Using an old email or phone number means you miss important notifications.
So accuracy, consistency, and up-to-date info. Sounds straightforward, but easy to slip up on.
Very easy. Double checking is crucial.
Okay. A practical question for NGOs already registered. Office bearers change. People come and go from the board. How do you update those details on the portal?
That's usually quite manageable. You need to log into your NGO Darpan account.
Using the NGO's credentials.
Right. Then navigate to the profile section for your organization. There should be an option there to manage the governing body or office bearer details.
And you can edit names, add new ones.
Yes, you can typically add new members, update their details, and remove people who are no longer involved. Keep it current.
Seems simple enough if you have the login. Okay, let's try and wrap this all up. We've covered a lot of ground. Can you just quickly summarize the main advantages again? Why should an NGO go through this DARPAN registration? What are the key benefits?
Sure. Let's boil it down. Benefit 1, access. It opens the door to apply for government grants and schemes. Many require it.
Okay. Access to government funds.
Benefit 2, credibility and transparency. It boosts how you're perceived by government, donors, the public.
More trustworthy.
Benefit 3, CSR funding. It makes you much more attractive and eligible for corporate social responsibility funds from companies.
Easier to get corporate partnerships.
And benefit 4, smoother processes. It often simplifies getting other important registrations, especially FCRA for foreign funding.
Facilitates other legal stuff.
Those are the big ones. Access, credibility, CSR, smoother processes.
That's a pretty compelling list. So it seems while it takes some effort up front, getting the documents, filling the forms, a potential payoff in funding, partnerships, and just overall standing seems pretty significant.
I think so. Especially for NGOs looking to grow and make a bigger impact, it's a valuable step for long-term sustainability.
Right, a worthwhile investment of time, perhaps.
Definitely.
Okay, well, that brings us towards the end of our deep dive on NGO Darpan registration. I think it's really clear now that, okay, maybe it's not a strict legal must for every single nonprofit out there.
Right.
But getting that Darpan ID, it can unlock some really important doors, especially around funding and just building that essential trust in the sector.
Absolutely. And hopefully walking through all these questions, has given you, the listener, that clarity we're looking for, maybe made the whole thing feel a bit less intimidating.
Yeah, hopefully demystified it a bit. And just to leave you with something to think about, consider your own specific work, your area within the nonprofit world. How could having that Darpan ID specifically help you? Could it open up new partnerships you hadn't considered? Are there particular government schemes or maybe CSR initiatives focused on your area that suddenly become reachable?
That's a great point. It prompts you to connect the registration to your actual goals.
Exactly. So maybe take some time after this, explore the NGO Darpan portal itself, see what specific opportunities might now be on the table for you.
Good advice.
Thanks so much for joining us for this exploration today.
My pleasure.